Hola amigos, ¿bien o no? Y saludos desde Medellín. Muy bonita la noche hoy, ¿no? Tenemos la luna con nosotros hoy. Entonces, tema de hoy, detalles. Detalles. ¿Y por qué detalles es el más importante? Estoy pensando con estas porque hoy y ayer yo necesito terminar con alguna reporte con los impuestos. Y como dice el chiste, la única dos cosas en el mundo seguro es muerte en impuestos, ¿no? So, ojalá que ustedes no tienen mucho con este tipo de formularios de impuestos, pero por supuesto es un muy buen ejemplo con una cosa cuando tú necesitas entender algo en más detalle. Entonces, ese es el tema de hoy. So, hello from Medellin. Another beautiful evening today. Look, we have the moon with us for the video this evening. So today the theme is detail, and why details are important. I got thinking about this because I've just been doing a tax return, and as we all know, as the joke goes, the only two certainties in this life are death and taxes. But one thing about tax returns, however painful they may be, is they do require you to think in detail. So extending that slightly, although I hope you don't have to fill in too many of these tax returns. Personally, I'd rather not have to do any more ever again, but that's another thing. But detail is important. So let's think about that a little bit. This is like a bit like we spoke about in an earlier video where we're trying to be present. So when we're in the place doing the talking to people, is to be present, like be there with them, listen to them, look at what's going around you, notice the other things that are happening. Because lots of these other clues, the non-verbal communication, the body language of the person, things around you you can see, may help you understand the situation better, particularly if perhaps you're not understanding everything the other person is saying. But as far as detail goes, well, we can try and prepare with as much detail as we can. So there is an aspect of that. We can try and think very hard about, in that situation, what would the ideal conversation look like? How much detail do you need to bring to that? What questions will the other person likely ask you? What will you need to know to answer those questions? If you're prepared like that, the conversation should be a little bit easier. Now, it doesn't mean you need to memorize great tracts of vocabulary or like speeches, but if you're familiar with some of the key words that the other person is going to use in that circumstance, that's what I mean by detail. So it's not just, oh, what do I say? Think about what's the other person going to ask you. That's where the detail comes in. If you can think of likely vocabulary they're going to use to ask those questions, you only need to look at some of the key words. You don't need to imagine how they'll phrase it, but you do need to know some of the key words that apply to that situation. So at that level, understanding the detail of useful phrases for that particular situation, vocabulary the other person is going to use to ask you questions, and then preparing yourself in the sense of, okay, so what information do I need to bring to help that conversation move along? Other things as well, we can think about, okay, if I get asked a difficult question, how do I defend my answer? How can I ask for more time to answer the question? How can I ask for more information? How can I correct any misunderstanding? What do I have to say to ask, something like, well, I'm sorry, I don't understand. Could you repeat that? Could you explain that, please? These kind of things. As we rehearse this in our mind before we start the conversation, that again is another detail we bring to that conversation we're going to have, because we've done a bit of preparation. It doesn't have to be weeks of practice. It could just be a few minutes before you go into the meeting, just refresh your mind about some of the key words you might be listening for, because that's going to give you the edge, because at least then you understand what the topic's about, and hopefully one of those key words will remind you, okay, now I know what we're talking about. That's that thing I need to give a bit more detail on. So there we go. Think about that. Detail. As we say, the devil is in the detail, so don't neglect it. Déjame saber en los comentarios, como siempre. But for now, from Medellin, this marvellous night sky coming our way, we'll say cheerio.